Ilhan Omar is not just in trouble, she might actually face criminal charges. Emails leaked, money trails exposed, a secret video that changes everything. But the real question is, what happens next? If you're ready to hear this powerful story, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment where you're watching from. It always starts the same way, a breaking news alert, a sensational headline flashing across every screen. But this time, it is different. Reports are flooding in. Ilhan Omar is officially under investigation. And the whispers? They are growing louder. Sources suggest that this is not just about ethics violation. This could lead to actual criminal charges. Social media is on fire. Some say it is a politically motivated attack. Others believe justice is finally catching up. The internet is split, and the arguments are getting heated. Major news outlets scramble to control the narrative. Omar's team is silent, waiting for the storm to pass. But this time, it might not. So, what is really going on here? How deep does this go? Who knew what, and when? Because behind the headlines, behind the staged press conferences, something much bigger is happening. The kind of thing that does not just shake up Washington, it exposes how the game is really played. If the allegations are true, this is not just another scandal. It is a direct hit on law enforcement, national security, and the integrity of the system itself. The real question is, who's protecting her, and for how long? Ilhan Omar's rise in politics was nothing short of remarkable. From a refugee camp in Kenya to a seat in the United States Congress, she became a symbol of change. But with that rise came controversy. She positioned herself as one of the strongest voices against immigration enforcement, constantly attacking ICE and calling for its abolition. She claimed it was about justice, about protecting family. But behind the speeches, behind the carefully crafted public image, there were things she did not want anyone to see. For years, allegations have followed her. Campaign finance violations, questionable donations, and secret connections to foreign groups. Reports surfaced about money being funneled through nonprofit organizations, some linked to radical movements outside the United States. Yet, every time concerns were raised, they were brushed aside. The media either ignored them or spun them into personal attacks against her. Critics were called racist or conspiracy theorists. Investigations were shut down before they could go anywhere. It was not just about what she was accused of, it was about who was protecting her. Washington runs on power, and power is built on control. Politicians who know how to play the game can make scandals disappear. They can turn a clear case of corruption into a misunderstanding. They can make an investigation look like political persecution. And for a long time, that strategy worked. Every time Omar faced serious accusation, she managed to escape with little more than bad headline. She had powerful allies, people willing to rewrite the story, to silence the question. But this time, something was different. This was not about a few misused campaign funds. This was not about controversial tweets or fiery speeches. This was about something far more serious. This was about national security. The investigation revealed that classified ICE operations had been leaked. Agents had their missions compromised. Criminal organizations had advance warnings before raids even happened. Migrants who were set to be deported vanished before ICE could get to them. It was not just bad policy or political activism. It was deliberate. Someone inside the system was feeding information to the other side. At first, people thought it was a leak, maybe a low-level employee passing information for money. But then the evidence started pointing higher. Reports surfaced of direct involvement from someone within Congress. Emails were uncovered, messages that showed coordination between political figures and groups working against law enforcement. And one name kept coming up, Ilhan Omar. This was not just about policies she supported. This was about direct sabotage. A member of Congress working against the country's own security operation. The kind of act that could put federal agents at risk, that could allow dangerous criminals to escape. The kind of act that was not just unethical, but criminal. The walls were closing in. The evidence was too strong. And this time, the people protecting her might not be able to make it go away. The truth was coming out, and it was bigger than anyone had imagined. You said. It started with a single document, a leaked memo from the Department of Homeland Security. On the surface, it looked like any other internal report. But buried in the details was something shocking. Multiple ICE operations had been compromised. Agents had been sent into raids only to find their targets already gone. Safe houses were emptied before law enforcement could arrive. Someone was tipping off criminal networks. Someone with access to classified government intelligence. At first, it seemed like a routine security breach, maybe a rogue employee, someone with a grudge. But then an inside source came forward. A federal agent, someone who had been tracking these leaks for months. He knew something was wrong. Every time ICE planned a major operation, certain high-profile targets would vanish just in time. It was not bad luck. It was not coincidence. Someone inside the system was feeding information to the very people ICE was trying to take down. And this was not just about stopping deportation. It was about protecting specific individuals, people with power, people with connection. The agent knew he could not go to his superior. He had seen what happened to others who asked too many questions, so he took a different route. He reached out to a journalist, someone who had a reputation for exposing corruption, no matter where it led. The meeting was set for midnight, in a secluded parking lot on the edge of the city. No email, no phone calls, no digital trail. This was the kind of conversation that could not afford to be overheard. John Solomon pulled up to the meeting spot. The streetlights flickered, casting long shadows across the empty lot. The agent was already there, waiting. He looked nervous, his hands stuffed deep into his coat pockets. As soon as John stepped out of his car, the agent spoke. "It is worse than you think," he said, his voice low. "This is not just a leak. It is a pipeline. Orders are coming from the top." John felt a chill run down his spine. He had expected corruption, maybe even criminal negligence. But this was something else. "Who?" he asked. "Who is behind it?" The agent hesitated. His eyes darted around the lot. "I cannot say yet. Not here. But I have proof. I just need more time to pull it together." Time! That was the one thing he did not have. The gunshot came out of nowhere. A single sharp crack that echoed through the night. The agent jerked back, his body collapsing onto the pavement. Blood spread across his shirt. His mouth opened, trying to speak, but no words came out. John dropped low, reaching for his sidearm. But there was no one to shoot. No car speeding away. No shadow moving in the distance. Just silence. Whoever had pulled the trigger was already gone. He knelt beside the dying man, gripping his arm. Who did this? Who gave the order? The agent's breath was shallow. His lips trembled. Then, just before the light faded from his eyes, he whispered a name. If this story is touching your heart right now, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below. Money never lies. When people in power try to cover their tracks, they can erase email, destroy documents, even silence witnesses. But the money? It always leaves a trail. And that is exactly where investigators started looking. Large donations had been pouring into U.S. nonprofits. On paper, these organizations were focused on immigrant rights and humanitarian aid. But when analysts followed the transactions, they found something unusual. The funds were not staying in one place. They were being moved, split into smaller amounts, rerouted through different accounts, and eventually landing in the hands of groups that were not just advocating for open borders, but actively working to obstruct ICE operation. Then came the untraceable campaign donation, millions of dollars flowing into political action committees, masked by shell companies and anonymous donors. But buried in financial reports, one name kept surfacing, Ilhan Omar. It was not direct, but the connections were too obvious to ignore. Organizations tied to her office had received large payments just before critical DHS operations were compromised. The deeper investigators dug, the clearer the pattern became. Emails surfaced, some from Omar's staff, coordinating with activists who had access to sensitive government information. There were offshore accounts, hidden transactions, and encrypted messages discussing upcoming raids that were mysteriously failing. Someone inside her circle was not just aware of these leaks. They were involved. Then, the real breakthrough came. A massive data breach exposed confidential emails, and what was inside changed everything. These were not vague conversations or political strategy discussion. These were direct communications, staff members forwarding DHS reports, warning activist groups about upcoming ICE operations, and making sure the right people had time to disappear before law enforcement arrived. It was not just interference. It was sabotage. John Solomon had seen corruption before, but this was different. This was not about bending the rules. This was about breaking them. The evidence was undeniable. These emails, these transactions, they told a story. And that story was not about protecting migrants. It was about power, control, and using the system to serve a personal agenda. The money had spoken. The only question now was, would Washington listen? Or would the people in power once again find a way to bury the truth before it could bring them down? The video was only a few minutes long, but it was enough to change everything. A dimly lit room, voices speaking in hushed tones. And then, clear as day, Ilhan Omar's voice, discussing ICE operation, not about how to stop them through legal channels, not about protesting policies. No! She was giving instruction, how to get information before it became public, how to make sure certain people were warned, how to shut down enforcement efforts before they could even begin. The clip hit the internet like a wildfire. Within hours, it was everywhere. Twitter, YouTube, Telegram. News outlets had no choice but to cover it. The right-wing media went in for the kill. Calls for her immediate removal flooded the airwaves. The left-wing media scrambled, trying to spin it, downplay it, discredit it. But the footage was raw, unedited, undeniable. Then came the protests. Outside government buildings, in the streets of major cities. People were angry. Some held signs demanding she be expelled from Congress. Others called for her arrest. Online, the outrage was even louder. The hashtag deport Ilhan Omar shot to the top of global trends. For hours, Omar said nothing. No interviews, no press statements. Then, finally, her response, carefully worded, rehearsed. This is a politically motivated attack. But no one was buying it. The pressure was mounting. The leaked video had changed everything, and Washington could not ignore it any longer. Within days, the House Oversight Committee announced a formal inquiry into Ilhan Omar's alleged involvement in obstructing ICE operation. Subpoenas were issued. Witnesses were called. The investigation was moving fast, and for the first time, Omar was forced to face real consequences. Behind the scenes, the whispers grew louder. Federal prosecutors at the Department of Justice had started digging into the evidence. Bank records, encrypted messages, leaked government memos. These pointed to something much bigger than just political activism. This was about obstruction, abuse of power, and possibly even criminal conspiracy. The question was no longer if Omar had played a role in leaking classified information. It was whether she would face real legal consequences. The political divide was immediate. Some Democrats rushed to defend her, calling the investigation a partisan attack. Others, sensing the scandal was too big to contain, began to distance themselves. Statements became vague. Support weakened. Meanwhile, Republicans saw an opportunity. They demanded her immediate expulsion. Some even called for her arrest, saying no elected official should be above the law. As the days passed, the tension inside Washington grew unbearable. Moderates, who had once remained silent, started to break ranks. Quiet conversations and closed-door meetings hinted at a larger reckoning. If the DOJ found enough evidence, would Omar be charged? Or would powerful allies step in to protect her? The country was watching. The media dissected every new detail. Legal experts debated the charges that could come. Protesters gathered outside the Capitol, demanding action. Omar, once defiant, now looked cornered. Would this be another Washington cover-up? Or would justice finally be served? The hearing room was packed. Journalists crammed into every available space, cameras rolling, waiting for the moment Ilhan Omar would walk through those doors. Outside, protesters chanted. Some demanded justice. Others called it a political hit job. But inside, the mood was different. It was tense. Cold. No one was here for a debate. They were here for answers. Omar entered, her expression unreadable. She took her seat, straightened her papers, and waited. Across from her, lawmakers wasted no time. The question started immediately. Had she knowingly leaked classified government information? Had she coordinated with activist groups to disrupt ICE operation? Had she used campaign funds to cover up illegal dealings? She denied everything. She called the accusations baseless. She claimed this was all a political attack meant to silence her, but her voice lacked the fire it once had. Then, the moment that changed everything, a congressman leaned forward, holding up a document. It was an email, not speculation, not hearsay. A direct exchange between Omar's office and a known activist group. The message was clear. A warning about an upcoming ICE raid. A confirmation that the leak had come from within. The room fell silent. Omar shifted in her seat. For the first time, she looked shaken. The fallout was immediate. Some Democrats who had defended her started to back away. A few called for her resignation. Republicans wasted no time. By the end of the hearing, a motion for her expulsion had already been introduced. Then came the whispers. A criminal referral to the Department of Justice was now a real possibility. One thing was clear, this was not over. The deeper investigators dug, the darker this scandal became. Is Ilhan Omar finally facing the consequences of her action? Or will the system protect her once again? The evidence is there. The emails, the leaked documents, the video, everything points to something much bigger than just politics. But will Washington actually act, or will this be another scandal that fades away before justice is served? One thing is certain, this is not over. The deeper investigators dig, the more corruption they uncover. The protests are growing, the pressure is building, and as the hearings continue, more names could come to light. More secrets could be exposed. Washington is on fire, and this scandal is not going away. What do you think? Should Ilhan Omar be removed from Congress? Should she face criminal charges? Or is this just another political game? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters. If you want to stay updated on this case and other breaking stories, make sure to subscribe. We have more explosive investigations coming soon, and you will not want to miss what happens next. The truth is coming out, and we are just getting started. If this story touched you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us, who is the unsung hero in your life?